A round-the-world adventure set across every Pokémon region to date, including the likes of Kanto, Kalos, and even Alola. Ash snagging fan favorites like Dragonite, Gengar, and even Lucario. Feats of supreme chadliness from the likes of Leon, Raihan, and even P-Dog Cerise. On paper, Pokémon Journeys is a Pokémon fan's dream come true, but when all is said and done, is the anime actually good? Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, it's Charles. How are you today? I just upped my Shuckle game with not one, but 4 brand new turtlenecks, and I can already feel my defense stats going through the roof. But how about you? Will you also be rocking a clean turt to ward off winter's chill this December? Anyways, it is time to answer a question that many Pokemon fans are grappling with. Is the Pokemon Journeys anime actually good? I've been putting this video off for ages because I wanted to give Journeys enough time to prove itself, and with the first episode airing way back on November 17th, 2019, we are now just over 1 year deep into Ash and Go's adventure, and so I think it is time to bring out the treat jar, the spank stick, and get to work with a preliminary verdict based on the first stretch of the show. So the plan today is to 1. Walk through Pokemon Journey's main sources of criticism and praise, and 2. Evaluate the show on the whole for what it is intended to be, for how it compares to other Pokemon anime series, and for how it stacks up against what I personally want to see from the Pokemon anime. And after the video, don't forget to mosey on over and check out some of the different kinds of content that have been popping up on the channel lately, as I'm sure that you will find something that you like, even if it is a little bit different than what you're used to. And as always, today's journey will be a fun time, so kindly request your Machoke to cross-chop that like button for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe for more Chad Champ Cerise content, and let's jump right in. So let us bang through the main points of criticism and praise. Presentation-wise, Journey is doing quite well for a weekly anime. The art style isn't quite as abstract as Sun and Moon, but still retains that simple look and a lot of the expressiveness that came along with it. In terms of sound, Yuki Hayashi's music has been doing exactly what it needs to do, and while I have no idea about the dub, the Japanese voice acting has been spot on the spoink. Rika Matsumoto is great as always, and I particularly love Daiki Yamashita's Go. He really does a great job building out Go's character in this whimsical sort of way, and his acting always gives me a good chuckle. Of course, for the voice acting to really excel, you need good dialogue, and the dialogue is on point too. All in all, the art style, the beats, the voice acting, and the fun writing make for an enjoyable experience on an episode-to-episode basis, and the world has this very nice feel to it as a result. Now, we'll get into the less rosy side of this in a bit, but the anime has certainly dished up a fair bit of fan service for longtime viewers. Whether it be Pikachu's reenactment of the famous scene in episode 1 of the original anime, the raid battles and curveball throw talk inserted to appeal to the Pokemon Go crowd, Ash and Go meeting up with the crew in Alola, Ash recalling his battle against Lieutenant Surge, the homecoming of the man with the baddest dad bod there is, Chuck. The appearance of classic characters like Lance and Corina, Dragonite, Gengar, and even Lucario making it onto Ash's roster. The show has been loaded with cameos and references to past segments of the anime, which only makes sense given what this anime is supposed to be. So at least on a superficial level, I think we can give the show a thumbs up for the fan service that it has delivered. But this also leads us to one of the more scathing criticisms of the show, and something that has been an issue with the Pokemon anime for many years. Now, presumably the whole point of having a round-the-world adventure set across all of the past regions that have been featured in the anime is, of course, to service longtime fans. But aside from some cute references, the show has really done very little to establish continuity with past seasons in any really meaningful way. And barring the Lucario thread, most of the fan service has been fairly shallow stuff disconnected from any significant plot points. This is a missed opportunity to capitalize on some otherwise pretty good fan service, and quite frustrating for fans who came into this series intrigued by the air of continuity that it put on. For example, we see all of Ash's trophies in the second episode, but that's it. And his accomplishments are never even mentioned outside of a passing remark to Go that he already has all of the Kanto region badges. And while this wouldn't have been strange to see his track record overlooked in the past, he came into this series as the regional champ of a Pokemon League who should theoretically be on par with some of the biggest names there are, and at least known to some degree in the Pokemon battling world. Clearly, shifting Ash's achievements onto the back burner is their way of resetting the power scale, but it feels awkward. And similarly, when Mewtwo returned just recently, Ash recognizes it as if it is indeed the Mewtwo he's had run-ins with in the past, but they just don't go anywhere with this, when it could have been expanded in a way that could have really maximized the return for both old and new fans. The title of the episode more or less came off as pretty shallow view bait. I really did expect a greater sense of continuity given how this series was pitched, and it almost makes you think that the whole round-the-world adventure concept was little more than a merch-moving ploy to capitalize on the nostalgia of kids who grew up with the show and who are now parents with the potential to buy their kids all kinds of figures and whatnot. So, although real continuity from previous segments of the show is usually off the table in the Pokemon universe, at the very least, previous series have taken us on structured journeys with clear step-by-step goals, progression, story arcs, and even multi-episode battles. And thus, perhaps the most widely held criticism of Pokemon Journeys is that the show feels more like an American Saturday morning cartoon for kids than the Pokemon anime series ever has, with episodes that feel barely connected and generally do absolutely nothing to drive forward any kind of overarching story. So while the episodes themselves are generally quite enjoyable, there's really nothing to keep the average viewer interested and invested in the show on a week-to-week basis apart from their simple love of Pokemon. And that's nice and all for Pokemon fans, but probably not overly conducive for drawing in new fans and holding their attention. Not to mention that in this round-the-world adventure, the self-contained episode format ironically destroys any sense of adventure, since Ash and Go just skip around with no real sense of progression from point to point, no sense of journeying, and only spend about one episode at a time in a given region, which doesn't give much of an opportunity for anything interesting to unfold. It all comes off as a bit disconnected and unfocused. And when there are quote-unquote arcs, they are not altogether great, barring one. Just consider Ash's redemption arc with Bee. He goes into their match overconfident, she crushes him, leaving him in a state of despair with a resolve to come back and take her down. And then, in the next episode, he totally flips and he's in great spirits, dinking around the woods with Go and a bunch of Pikachus, like he's completely forgotten that his ego just got crushed into the dirt. And then, next up, in the following episode, he's back in his depressed state, taking a bunch of L's and moping about as Go steps up, overshadows him, and makes him look like a noob, despite being a league champion. He then travels to Alola with Go in another episode in which nothing happens to move forward the redemption arc, and after that he spends another episode digging around for fossils, before randomly having a rematch with Bee in the subsequent episode. At this point, Bee has already moved up hundreds of ranks in the World Coronation series, while Ash has been fooling around blowing dandelion seeds in the grass, and yet somehow he takes her to a draw all the same. The progression of this Bee narrative has been very inconsistent and underwhelming to the point where I've wondered if certain episodes of the show were cancelled or aired out of order due to the whole Corsola measles hiatus back in spring. As such, I was hyped for the 4-part Sword and Shield arc, and yes, it indeed delivered something very good, which is why it is just such a shame that we don't get more compelling content like this. I think viewers would be much more motivated to stay on board for the long run. Now, while the self-contained episode format hasn't really thrilled me, I will say that the general level of the filler has been pretty good in Pokemon Journeys. In particular, they've been trying out this new format in which certain filler episodes are actually split into 2 parts, and while it has been a bit hit or miss, episode 26 had to be one of the funniest, craziest Pokemon episodes ever aired. Do check out my video explaining all the quirky Japanese humor that was on display in that episode. If crazy, fun filler like this was slotted into a set of delicious, interconnected story arcs, the show would be an absolute treat indeed. Go. There are people who love Go, and there are people who hate Go. That is undeniable. But personally, I think he is one of the best aspects of the series, because his motivations are something new to the Pokemon anime, with his focus on catching Pokemon, finally bringing the other of the 2 important pillars of the Pokemon universe to the forefront. And funnily enough, this is actually why most people hate him. They hate how many Pokemon Go catches and how he catches them quite easily. And to an extent, I do agree that the ease with which he catches Pokemon certainly undermines the significance that catches have had in the show to date. And you could also argue that it unsettles the balance with Ash, with a newbie like Go building up this massive collection. I'm curious what your take on the whole Go situation is. But setting the catch hacks aside, what I've particularly enjoyed about Go is that he isn't just an Ash tag-along. He has his own mission, and he only travels with Ash as a means of achieving that mission, which is quite different from past companion characters, as even though they've had their own goals, they've mostly been content to just follow Ash around. Also, whereas Ash has essentially remained a static character for years, making Goku look like Akane Tsunemori, Go as a character has been transforming, and his goals and skills have been developing and shifting, and this makes him interesting. All in all, I think that Go is a good boy. But how about you? Well, those are my main points of criticism and praise regarding the Pokemon Journeys anime, and I'm looking forward to hearing about what you have loved or hated about the show. But to wrap things up on my end, here's my final take on the show from 3 perspectives. The show's creators have clearly went into this stretch of the anime with the intention of making it a very relaxed, Saturday cartoon-like show made for the consumption of newer fans and the pocketbooks of 25 to 35-year-old parents who grew up with the early segments of the anime. And when considered as such a show, it's really great, even though they are disconnected from any coherent narrative progression, apart from Ash sometimes taking the time to boost up his World Coronation Series ranking and Go catching things willy-nilly. The episodes themselves are not overly serious, but they are almost always a fun time, and I can't really say that there's been any particular episode that was really bad. So if you go into the show with these expectations, I think you will certainly enjoy it. Now, stacked up against previous segments of the anime, it's alright. It doesn't have the laid-back charm of Sun and Moon, it doesn't have the structure and shonen anime feel of XY, and it doesn't have the colorful Ash of the early era adventures. But it does have plenty of good battles, soulful moments, and comedy, as you'd expect from any Pokemon series. And the Sword and Shield arc was a good indication that if they took all of these moving parts and tied them into a solid narrative, the anime just has so much potential. So I think if they took the overarching story a little bit more seriously and also recaptured the sense of adventure from the Kanto to Kalos era Pokemon anime, then I think Pokemon Journeys would very quickly rise up the ranks as one of the better segments of the show. Lastly, compared to what I would personally like to see from the anime, well, it could use some work. I've certainly appreciated all of the fan service that we've seen, but it's never really amounted to what it could be outside of the whole Lucario thread. And the disconnected, self-contained episode format really isn't my thing. Not to mention the lack of real continuity with previous segments of the show, but that's been a gripe I've had with the anime for years now, and I get that this is the model that they have built the show on, and for them it probably is much easier to have the whole floating timeline and a very loose narrative structure since there isn't one mastermind guiding the production of the show. Rather, it is handled by multiple people with creative control and ever-changing teams. But there actually are long-running stories enjoyed by younger audiences that are linear, cohesive, and thriving off of tight storytelling arcs. And I think that Pokemon adopting a structure more similar to something like One Piece, with proper arcs that are interconnected and deliver a big payoff to fans, would only broaden its appeal. Something that is particularly important as the children's TV segment in Japan continues to be eroded. But I guess that's not what Pokemon is, and I'm okay with that. I still enjoy the show for what it actually is, a fun anime that doesn't take itself too seriously but breathes life into the multimedia world that I've grown up with, while also connecting me with many other fans. And so if you are like me, a little bit frustrated with Pokemon Journeys but still enjoying it, I would say that the best approach is just to have fun with it on an episode-to-episode basis and shift the heavy lifting over to another anime if you're thirsting for continuity, arcs, and other things that we have noted. I mean, it's just like eating. I love potatoes, but I wouldn't want to just eat potatoes every day. Getting some broccoli, some steak, perhaps even some gravy, maybe a glass of wine, and some dessert while I'm at it. That really spices life up. And watching anime is the same. I've continued to enjoy watching Pokemon over the years because it is like this one important staple food on the plate in that balanced charu anime diet. And so while I certainly wouldn't want to stop eating my potatoes, bringing out the other dishes just makes the whole meal taste even better. Regardless of the negative points that I've noted today, I am enjoying Pokemon Journeys. It's always fun to drop into that world while having a bite to eat and to just appreciate the good voice acting, the animation, the feel of the world that's been put together for us. And I am looking forward to see if things pick up as we move into the next stretch of the anime. But how about you? Are you loving Pokemon Journeys? Are you hating it? Or are you somewhere in between? I'm curious what you think. Well, thank you for tuning in, everyone. I hope you all have a very healthy, happy, and safe week. Do check out some of the other videos on the channel that have come out recently. I think you will enjoy some of them, even if they are a little bit off the beaten path. Don't forget to follow me over on Twitter, and as always, let's chat.